and I'm talking about your homework tonight. You were given a little bit of a break tonight. You did not have to do the right, and you did not have to do the stretch. And you only had to do numbers 1 through 5 on your practice. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We did some of these in class together. And you also have to do the back side, all of the review, all. Okay, so let's go back to the other side where we're talking about our multiplication of fractions and division. So today we practiced some division, so I'm going to start with those first. When you divide, I'll work with number 2 first, and I'll do some examples like number 2. When we divide with fractions, especially when we have a whole number in front, the numbers usually get bigger, which is contrary to what we do when we do whole numbers, because usually when we divide with whole numbers, the answer gets smaller. So when we have a whole number in front, you should see that your answer or the quotient gets larger. So I'm going to work out some of my problems over here because I have room. I'm going to take my 8, and it's a whole number, but I want to put it over 1 because I'm working with a fraction on the other side. We cannot divide with fractions because it would look like this. It would be like 3/4 with a division symbol and then 8. So that looks kind of silly. We can't do that. So they came up with something to do the inverse where we can still multiply, which we know how to multiply. We just multiply across. But we can't write 3/4 because then we were treating it as a multiplication problem. Like there was never a division symbol, but there was. So we have to change it to multiplication, but we kind of have a penalty, is kind of what I said earlier in class, where we have to flip the second fraction. We have to flip it or do the reciprocal, and that's a fancy word for flipping. So we're going to keep what we had originally. We changed the symbol, and then we flip our second fraction. And now we multiply across just like we did yesterday. We would say 8 times 4, which is 32, and then 1 times 3, which is 3. Something else that we talked about in class was simplifying ahead of time, simplifying before you multiply. So that way you're multiplying with smaller numbers or smaller digits. Well, you can simplify by dividing by a common factor, but it has to be a numerator with a denominator. So I can't go across and simplify right here. Yes, they have a common factor, 8 and 4 do, which is 4, but I can't simplify because they are both numerators. I can do a numerator with a denominator. Like over here, I could do a numerator with a denominator, but I can't go side to side. So I look at my numbers, and I could not have simplified any smaller by doing a numerator with a denominator. So I ended up with 32 over 3, but we talked about this today in class, and I said it was okay for last night, but we want to change this to back to a mixed number. We do that by dividing the denominator into the numerator. 3 divided into 32. How many times can 3 go into 3? 1 time. We get exactly 3. We have 0. Bring down your 2. Now how many times does 3 go into 2? 0 times. I get 0. So I would have a remainder of 2. So my answer would be a whole 10. My remainder goes on top, and I always keep my denominator, 3. So this would be your final answer for number 2. I'm not going to do number 3 because it's the only other division problem. I want you to try it on your own. But I'll do another example like the one I did. I'll just make up some different numbers. So let me erase this ink and let's do another one. Let's do maybe 6 divided by, let's do 2/5. So again, I can't divide with a fraction. It would look silly. So I'm going to keep my whole number. It's going to be 6 over 1. I'm making it a fraction so I can match the fraction on the other side. Change my symbol to multiplication because I know how to multiply fractions, but I have a penalty, so I have to flip my numerator and my denominator. So now I have a 5 as my numerator and denominator as 2. Now in this situation, I do have some numbers I can simplify right now. I can do the 2 and the 6 because I have a numerator and a denominator. So I like to circle them. And so that way the person that's grading my paper or the person that's looking at my work sees what I'm doing. I'm simplifying the 2 and the 6. I'm dividing both of them by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is now 1. Cross them out. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. So now I have much smaller numbers that I'm working with. So I work it out, and I get 3 times 5, which is 15, and 1 times 1 is 1. So to simplify this, I would say I would make it a whole number because it's improper right now, and 1 can go into 15 whole times. So this would be my final answer. Okay, let's talk about the multiplication. I'm not going to do one from this page, but I will be happy to do one that I will make up some numbers just so you can kind of see that again. Let's do 3 1/3 times, let's do 2 4/5. Okay, can I multiply mixed numbers? No, a lot of kids think that you can just go 3 times 2 and get 6, and then do the 1 times the 4 and get 4, and the 3 times the 5 and get 15. But that's not that easy. You cannot do that. You have to change them to improper. So I do that with the check mark. Some students did it like this little thing like that. And they would say times and plus, whichever you like or what your teacher taught you in elementary, because this is back from elementary. So I would change it to improper by saying 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. And I keep my bottom number. So my new fraction as improper, my equivalent fraction would be 10/3. I do the same thing with these, and I do 2 times 5 is 10, plus 4 is 14/5. So now I can look and say, hey, can I simplify ahead of time so I don't have to do 10 times 14, which I can. I can simplify 10 and 5. They can both be divided by 5, which gives me 1, and here I get 2. Can I simplify anywhere else? No, I can't simplify the 2 and the 3. Can't simplify the 1 and the 14. I can't do 3 and 14, and I already did it this way. So now I'm just going to have to multiply across. Okay, so 2 times 14 gives me 28, and 3 times 1 gives me 3. Now, I'm not able to leave it like this. We talked about this today. We got to change it back into a mixed number by dividing. 3 goes into 28, 9 times, because that gives me 27, and I would have 1 left over. And there is my final answer. All right, you have to do the review tonight. Someone's calling me on my phone, and I have to answer it. The review is stuff that you've had in the past, so it should be very easy. Don't forget your formulas for all the areas, and you can look at them. It should be inside your math notebook. Have a good night.